right, we're going to bring the meeting to order. That's a nice little mallet there. So I would like to ask everybody at this time to turn their cell phones off, or their watches. Actually, I think I will do that myself, yes. And then please raise for the Pledge of Allegiance as you are able. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Would you like to do a roll call, please? City Clerk Barr?
Councilmember Lowe. Councilmember Gurney.
Present.
Vice Mayor Wellander.
Here.
Councilmember Dean.
Present.
Mayor Farrar-Rivas.
Present.
Thank you.
So there was no closed session, so there is not a report on the closed session. I would like to ask if any member of the council has any changes that they would like to make to the agenda. Seeing no, let's ask for a motion.
I move approval of the agenda.
I'll second.
Okay. City Clerk Barr?
Councilmember Lowe.
Aye.
Councilmember Gurney.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wellander.
Yes.
Councilmember Dean.
Aye.
Mayor Farrar-Rivas.
Aye.
Thank you. The motion carries unanimously.
So we're going to go to section 1 on the agenda, and this is comments from the public. At this time, members of the public may address the council on matters not listed on this agenda, but which are within the subject matter of the jurisdiction of the council. This public comment period will be limited to 10 speakers. Each speaker will be allowed up to 2 minutes. Speakers who do not have an opportunity to speak during this time will be allowed to make public comments under agenda item number 10, which is our second public comment period. If there are no more than 10 speakers, second public comment will not be open. So if you would like to speak, form a line. Let's see. There's only a few of us. We don't need to stay up in a line. So you can sit down and wait for when it's your time to come up, since there's only a few of you.
I thought you were telling me to sit down.
No, we would, yes. We're looking forward to your comments.
2 minutes, okay. I have 3 things, which is pretty good for a Texan. You remember the governor could not do 3, a former governor. That's the joke to ease you up, whatever.
Okay, we're laughing. Good.
I have 3 things to say. I had a chat with Jennifer just before the meeting, and I may be confused in some things, and if I am, I apologize ahead of time, but I want to say what I want to say. The proposed revisions to the mixed-use definition for the general plan, I find too broad. I would like to see the hotel category removed because it's a special category. It requires a number of preconditions and a number of conditions after it's completed. I would like to see a separate category for affordable housing because those parcels have been identified by the city. Please, no more city meetings for the benefit of a private developer. Now, I know it was called an update on the city plan, but I got a couple of phone calls and everybody called it a Sebastiani meeting, and that was the general consensus of the audience, that it was a Sebastiani meeting. So that's why I reacted like I did. Developers should have their own meetings and pay their own bill for the venue, not the city. On the city's website, this one's minor, but it helps save my computer cartridge ink. On the page where for meetings, the one that's shown should always be the next meeting up. I have printed so many times. Today was the Planning Commission from March 16th, 2023. So help, save my ink.
Evening, Council. Steve McCrosty, 4th Street East. I too have three things to mention in relation to last week's invigorating meeting. Thank you for the meeting. It was very informative. There was a lot of good feedback. I think the tenor of the conversation, however, was pretty in opposition to what is being put forth as a plan for the Sebastiani property. So that's what I want to talk about. I think we neighbors are generally not comfortable with developing a hotel there. And I think it starts with my wife's and my remembrance of the 2017 fires, when there was such a brouhaha of cars and their difficulty getting out of town. I think it's important that we tread carefully on the issue of infrastructure in various categories, but certainly the most important of them is traffic and access. If that property gets developed in a very major way, boy, I'm just concerned about people getting out of town in a timely way in the case of an emergency. That's one point. With Sonoma's fame and its rich history in winemaking, it seems incongruous to be classifying the whole property as Sonoma mixed commercial. It seems wrong-headed to be classifying the vineyards in that part of it too. I sure wish we could keep those vineyards in honor of our rich heritage of winemaking and wine quality fame. And lastly, the fact that we're in a neighborhood, that area is in an area surrounded by homes, it just seems a little bit uncomfortable for us neighbors. And you're going to be hearing a lot about this as time goes by, of course, that we would like to see the property developed in a respectful way that doesn't involve too much commercial aspect. Thanks a lot.
Hello, my name is Erin McTaggart. I live at 380 Church Street. I own property on Brazil Street. I have a vested interest in 402, 402A, 428, and properties located there on 4th Street East. I'm here to also address the Sonoma mixed-use rezoning proposition. I feel that while housing suits with the housing and residents that are there, and there was a need during the planning and the planning meeting that was on Friday morning, housing was a big priority. I'm interested in why the rezoning at the moment doesn't include more mid-density like Las Casitas or higher density there at the Sebastiani Winery property. Also, I'm concerned that if there is a stipulation for commercial use, that even though it's not maybe the developer's desire or anybody else's, we could have a 7-Eleven, an In-N-Out, a Starbucks, anything else that wants to take over lease there, because those multinational and national chains, they're off the plaza, right? That property is. So one wouldn't stop them from being on that site if there is a lot of commercial property use there. Also, that's a narrow bridge. It's a residential community, and I think it should just remain residential. But hopefully there'll be higher, density housing there, and that might solve a few problems, right? So, thank you.
Would we like, thank you. Anybody else would like to make a comment? And seeing none, we will close the public comment period. Now we're going to be moving on to meeting dedications. Do any of my fellow council members like to make a dedication? So I would like to dedicate tonight's meeting, and I would like to dedicate tonight's meeting to the members of Sonoma's immigrant communities, both past and present. And then moving on, looking for council member reports and comments. Yes, Councilmember Wellander.
I had the opportunity to go this morning with my public works, or with our public works director, to the WACTAC, which is the Water Advisory Commission or Committee. And just a few tidbits that made me kind of smile this morning. One is that, yes, both of our lakes, Mendocino and Sonoma, are filled to the brim. And interestingly, they have what they call the Farrar deviation, which just simply means that there is now a zone above the definition of filled that allows for there to be potentially about 30,000 acre feet of additional water before they start letting it out. And so we should be able to fill that extra zone, which simply means that we have that much water to use wisely in the event as needed. So I found that a plus. The last item that I do want to also share with you was a question that was brought up by a concerned citizen about, I believe he was referring to the uncertainties of the East Coast and the need for water in Southern California, and whether or not we would be subject to some directives coming from Washington about shipping water south. The good news is that if that happens, we have no conveyance system within our county to share our water, even if we wanted to. So at this point in time, even if certain decisions are made that will impact the Central Valley and the Delta, and sending water south, unless we're forced at gunpoint to build some sort of system to ship it over to the Central Valley, we will not be impacted by that. So I just wanted to share that.
Other reports? Yes, Councilwoman Lowe.
Usually I'm reporting on my LAFCO meeting after the meeting, but since we're meeting on Monday, the LAFCO meeting is Wednesday, I thought I'd tell you what we're going to look at. So, because I think it's interesting that it is going to be a reorganization of the Sonoma Valley Fire District involving the dissolution of Kenwood and joining it with Sonoma Valley Fire. And just for those of you who are concerned about fire, and I heard it mentioned tonight in the public comments, there's been several unifications of fire districts over the past year through LAFCO, which has been supported by all of the fire chiefs, Mr. Aker, et cetera, and creating a stronger fire protection district for all of us. So that will be on the agenda on Wednesday. Thank you.
Well, I wish I had had the same kind of foresight that Councilwoman Lowe did, because I'm in the same situation where I generally report on Sonoma Clean Power, and that meeting coming up is Thursday. And it's quite lengthy agenda items, so I won't go over it. But just a few things. I attended on January 18th. I was one of the speakers for the People's March that happened here in Sonoma and was in front of City Hall, that was put on by Wake Up Sonoma, and I was joined by a number of excellent speakers. There's Lisa Stormat was there from Wake Up Sonoma, but there was also our majority leader, Cecilia Aguilar Curry, Supervisor Rebekah Hermosillo, Senator Christopher Calvadon, a performer, Lambert Moss from San Francisco, who was amazing, and then Xavier Davenport, who was a trans-masculine leader from San Francisco, and then Leslie Liu from Planned Parenthood, and Marcus Malouf from the Teamsters. But it was there was maybe about 100 people there, maybe a little more, and there was a nice march down Broadway, and Chief Cutting was there as well, and it went very well. Then the other thing is Councilwoman Lowe and I went on a hike with Lynn Clary on the 20th, and he is one of the volunteers for Montini Preserve, and he really took us on a hike that was really a fire-conscious hike. of showing us some of the activities that are being done to, to deal with the height of the grass and manage the trees and do some pile burns, but also gave us a tour of where fires had been and kind of insight of how they travel down and where fire breaks should be. So that was great. All of us except for Council Member Gurney attended the Cal Cities, the League of California Cities Conference in Sacramento, from the 22nd to the 24th, and then a number of us attended the Women's Foundation anniversary, the 125th anniversary of the Sonoma Women's Foundation, and then on the January 28th, Sister Cities was very kind to have an event, Meet the Mayor event, which was very exciting to attend, and I wanted to thank them for that. I also did a tour of the Unity Kitchen. Chef Don Kahn gave me a tour of the kitchen, and I'm going to plan on going back there again, but that was really quite informative to see, how many meals they serve there and what they produce out of that kitchen. So, which is a fair-sized kitchen, but it's not enormous, so there's a lot of work done out of there. I met with Supervisor Rebekah on the 29th, just to the new supervisor, new mayor meeting. How are we working together? And then, of course, all of you are familiar with it. There was the, not all of you, but most of you, the goal-setting meeting on January 30th that we attended, and also the general plan update meeting that many people have spoken to here today. So that's my my report. Moving on, do we have any comments and announcements from our city manager?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I do want to acknowledge the goal setting and the general plan meeting as well last week. Thank you for the public that showed up. I think close to 200 people showed up for the general plan meeting. A lot of input on the goal setting, so it was a great opportunity to provide that space. And thank you, Jennifer Gates, our Community Development Director, for creating that space and being there to help answer questions and guide us through that meeting. Just a couple little things coming up. We are in the process of cleaning City Hall, so you may see our crews out there cleaning some of the black marks off the City Hall. So they've got a method down. We've tested a few different approaches and have a real gentle pressure on there to help protect the rock itself. But so they're working very carefully and meticulously through to make sure that the City Hall is clean, and hopefully this summer you'll be able to get some good pictures without the black staining on it. Also late this week, depending on weather, either Thursday or Friday, we will be starting restriping of the plaza. So that's the crosswalks, the handicap spaces, curbs, the green curbs that we talked about earlier, and refreshing some of the other curbs on the site. We will be removing some of the signs, so the short-term parking signs, as we talked about before, those will come down, and we'll just stencil on the curb itself the time limit, so that'll help remove some of the visual impacts of those signs. And one change on the crosswalks that the public will be aware of, and we'll be doing some public outreach on this as well, is that there'll be a new area for the mid crosswalks to provide a little safety refuge for pedestrians to get past where the cars are parked, so it's a little safer to cross the streets. And so we'll be doing information about that, how that's going to work, but you'll see some changes in our mid block crosswalks. And then finally, I will be out of the office Wednesday and Thursday meeting with all of the city managers in California. We get together once a year, and so that is coming up this week. And so I'll be doing that later this week, and I'll report back on anything I learn. And that's all I have.
Thank you. And now I would like to see if we have any comments from our city attorney, David Ruderman.
No report this evening.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor Farrar-Rivas, can you please remember to use your
Yes,
mic?
I can. Oh, thank you. I think it was that short nap I took before coming here. So here we go. So this is the, we're going to move on. I believe we have no presentations this evening, so we will be moving on to item number 7, the consent calendar. So all of the items listed on the consent calendar are considered to be routine and will be acted upon by a single motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless members of the council or staff request specific items to be removed for a separate action. Would any of our council members like to pull any of the items from our consent calendar? Seeing none, I would like to then ask for a motion for approval.
Public comment, Mayor.
Yes, correct. Thank you. Any public comment on the consent calendar? Seeing none, I'd like to ask for a motion to approve the consent calendar.
Move to approve.
Second.
City Clerk Barr?
Councilmember Lowe,
Aye.
Councilmember Gurney,
Yes.
Councilmember Wellander,
Yes.
I'm sorry, Vice Mayor Wellander, Councilmember Dean,
Aye.
Mayor Farrar-Rivas.
Aye.
Thank you. The motion carries unanimously.
Thank you. Moving on, we have no public hearing tonight, so now we are going to be moving on to item number 9, the regular calendar. So, item 9.1 is a resolution of the City Council authorizing the city manager to sign on behalf of the city a funding agreement with the County of Sonoma for the disbursement of proceeds from Measure H. And Measure H is the improvement and enhancement of local fire protection, paramedic services, and disaster responses, transactions, and use tax ordinance. So we're going to have a presentation by our city manager, and I will hand it over to you, David.
Great, thank you, Mayor. And this item, I'm going to go over quickly about what this item is, what we will do, what the authorization will allow me to do, and the next steps on how we're going to move forward with this. So as you mentioned, we're talking about Measure H, which on March 5th, the voters of Sonoma County passed. That was a countywide measure, we essentially is known as the fire tax that brought money into the fire districts to provide the services that you mentioned. Some examples of those services that the tax will support include wildfire prevention, preparedness, emergency response, vegetation management, recruitment and retention of local firefighters, update of equipment and facilities, transfer of funds between agencies, and other countywide expenditures. So the measure is fairly broad in its terms, and so we'll talk a little bit about that, and you'll see in the agreement how we look to address that. The Measure H is a half-cent sales tax. That's planned to generate a substantial amount of funds to the fire districts for those services. The City of Sonoma is allocated 1.18% of that amount, which equates to about just over $700,000 a year, and that'll fluctuate based on obviously the sales tax generation. In order to manage this Measure H language had creation of a Measure H oversight committee as part of the ballot measure. Now that that's passed, that committee will be set. It'll make up of 11 members. 6 of those members will be chosen by the Board of Supervisors. Of those 6, the mayors and council members will be selecting 2 of those to pass forward to the supervisors. 3 of the committee members will be appointed by the Sonoma County Fire Chiefs Association, and 2 committee members will be appointed by the Sonoma County Fire Districts Association. And so there will be a committee there, and the role of that committee is to oversee and work with the cities and fire districts to ensure that we are administering Measure H in the fashion that it was voted on by the public. The agreement in front of you today is a funding agreement. Part of Measure H required that we have a funding agreement in place between the city, all the cities that receive funding, and the fire districts that receive funding, between us and the county. The county is administrator of those funds. The taxes come into the county then distributes those funds to the city based on the way the measure was written. The Measure H Oversight Committee will ensure that we're implementing the measure correctly. So those are the 2 functions that we'll be working with. So this first step we're doing now is to have an agreement with the county to receive the funds. The agreement, as you see in the packet, has been redlined. So the agreement that we received from the county was reviewed by our city attorney and by the city attorneys of other cities. We all got together and talked through and identified some ambiguities and some issues that we felt needed to be corrected or modified. And we made those red lines in the attached that you see. We have given those red lines to the county for their review. They are aware of the red lines that we're proposing tonight. Part of your action tonight will give me authority to make any slight adjustments as we negotiate that final funding agreement, but as long as it stays consistent with the way that we're proposing to move forward. As part of this agreement, there is a discussion about maintenance of effort, and essentially what that means is there's a certain baseline funding level the city needs to maintain funding for the fire uses, and it's locked in as of, I believe, 2022 is the year. And the concept is that no matter what, the funding level will never go below that amount over time. And that's what the maintenance of effort discussion is and calculation has to be. That conversation we are essentially kicking down the road to have a conversation with the oversight committee. The oversight committee will be the one to oversee that and ensure that the cities are adhering to that baseline, that measure of maintenance of effort clause. So I will come back to the city council once we negotiate with that newly formed Measure H committee on how we will interpret that clause, how we will implement that clause. As you're aware, we contract for service for fire services. We don't have a fire department within the city. And so our situation is slightly different than other cities in the county. And so we'll have to work through that to determine the best way to make sure that the city is represented correctly and that we're following the measure as intended. So I will bring back to the city council once we have that figured out for you to approve that approach on how we deal with maintenance of effort, once that committee is in place and once we've had the time to work through that. So again, all we're doing today is signing, allowing me to enter an agreement with the county to start receiving funds, which we will receive, I believe, in March of this year. They'll start coming in, which will help pay for some of the services that have already been identified, which includes the 3 firefighters that were part of the SAFER grant and REDCOM fees that we all pay within the county. So those will be covered by those funds. As a side note, we did factor that into the budget, so this is not a new funding source. We did anticipate this. We factored in how much of that would be taken off of our general fund liability moving forward. So that's already been factored into the budget you saw in previous years, or last year's budget. So with that, I'm going to turn it back to the city council if you have any questions. Again, just as from a process standpoint, if you approve this tonight, we will continue to work with the county, fine-tune this agreement, get this agreement signed, start to receive the funds. The Measure H Oversight Committee will be established in the April-May timeframe. We'll work with that committee to determine the final oversight of how this is going to work, and I'll come back to council with how that works, and then get your approval to sign off on any maintenance of effort clause moving forward.
Thank you very much for making something that could be very complicated sound very clear. So do we have any questions from council? Yes, Councilmember Wellander.
I would like just a little bit of clarity on the baseline. So the baseline was established between the period of 2022, is that what I heard, or 21-22? And that intent is that whatever we were contributing to the contract at that point in time is the minimum amount that we will always be obligated to contribute?
In essence, yes. The intention of that is to ensure that cities do not supplant funds. So essentially to take this tax measure funding and put it towards something else, say a park. The unintended consequence of that is it locks in a certain dollar amount that a general fund is paying to a certain one area of a function of government. So, but your point, you're correct. It locks in at that, I believe,
Fiscal year 2021-22.
21-22.
So that's a function of the measure itself.
Yeah.
The measure was written, I mean, they could have said an average of the last 10 years, right? But the measure says, no, the way we're going to calculate it is based on the proportional allocation for fire services that you spent in 21-22.
And just if I could add one
Sure.
small thing. So in a city that has a fire department in it, the way they would typically look at that is they go back to the fiscal year 21-22, look at their overall general fund budget, figure out how much of that percentage goes to fire, say it's 20, 22, 23, 24%, locks that 24% in. So as the general fund grows over time, that would have to be proportional.
So there's no like inflation clause or anything like that would make that baseline increase as the years going forward?
There's nothing in the measure that talks about inflation.
Okay. And so we're establishing a percentage of the general fund that we're going to be committed to.
That is actually, it's a really good question. That is something that we're still working through. The measure is not clear. So it could be a percentage, it could be a specific number, but that is something we're going to be working through.
If I can steal the phrase, you can circle back on that.
Councilmember Dean.
Measure H, I remember that is total around $60 million. But you just mentioned 1.18%. The amount should be more than 600,000, but you mentioned about 300,000, or maybe it's not, how much? 700 or some? Oh, okay.
Yeah,
That may-
between $700,000 and $800,000.
Okay.
It's gonna vary, but that's the estimate that we're.
That is right, yeah.
Councilwoman Lowe.
So, thinking forward, what if the city expanded in some way? We talked about that at our, our goal setting meeting, and we still are looking at, our impact on the surrounding areas. So, let's just say 8th Street East. Okay, let's just throw out something. Is that same percentage then applied to us, even though, let's say, the responsibility of the city increases? And how would we apportion that? And the same thing could be applied to, of course, other cities as well, assuming they don't shrink. I don't know. I mean, you would know, Mr. Guin, regarding Roseland when that adoption came forward, but there's also a small portion relatively near Coffee Park that was just added to the city of Santa Rosa that probably was not part of, and maybe not significant in terms of percentage for the city of Santa Rosa. But how does the measure account for the boundary changes that might occur within cities?
I'll just say in terms of Roseland, I think that's part of the reason why it took 15 years, because of those type of complexities. It does come down to a negotiation at that point in terms of negotiating the property, the taxes and the element, what element would come from the county. Once county coming into a city, you'd have to negotiate as part of that transfer. I don't believe, I'm going to turn to our attorney to see if that, we have Steve there, if that was in the measure or not, and I don't know if it is or not.
In the measure, it talks about what would happen if there was a consolidation of any of the fire districts. But I didn't see anything in there that talks about annexation.
We're going to ask Chief Aker to come up and
Hi.
add in.
Thank you. So I had the honor of, I think it's an honor, of being part of a small group of folks that actually crafted this measure and put in some of the language. So the city manager and city attorney are absolutely correct that there is no provision in there for small, like kind of individual territories that are annexed to a city or a fire district. However, in the event of a consolidation, which we happen to be going through with Kenwood right now, and you will see us.
Yes,
on
I mentioned it in my report earlier. You missed
Thank
it.
you. Yeah, I apologize. I was
No,
in
no.
Chiefs interviews all day today and got here a little bit late.
I gave them a little background on
Thank
how we're doing this. Thank you.
So in the event of that, as that consolidation moves forward, Kenwood Fire District's percentage will go to the Sonoma Valley Fire District. The Shell Vista Fire District, which I believe some of the territory that the city may be looking at annexing, they have a separate percentage. So there's no provision in the ordinance that says, if you take 10% of another agency's land or value, that proportions get changed.
Although there is an agreement within the amendment agreement in the agreement that allows agreement may not be changed, modified, or rescinded except in writing signed by all parties. So there is the capability of changing the agreement if all parties agree.
That's
I
with
believe
respect
that's
to the
just the
funding
funding agreement. I don't, that we
But
cannot
what Mr.
change.
Ewan said was correct in terms, anytime there's an annexation, especially a large one, you have to have a property and usually sales tax sharing agreement with the county at that point. And so in the end, it often comes down to simply a negotiation between the agencies for things like that. And given that we're dealing with a initiative here, it may be something that the oversight committee would need to also agree to if there was a transfer of these taxes.
Well, that makes sense. And so, so the agreement would be with the county, and there would be some, payback, for example, that might occur if, for example, the Springs were annexed to the city of Sonoma. That would be a large enough, you know, it wouldn't be like just one lot or one, you know, piece. And then, of course, the fire district piece. But, okay, I think a lot of, you know, initiatives, rightly or wrongly, are done, and the devil sometimes is in the details, but, you know, they are what they are once they're passed by the voters. They are what they are, unless they're changed also by the voters. So it's up to us to implement the voters' will, and we shall.
And if I may add one more comment about the maintenance of effort piece. So again, being part of the small team that crafted this measure, we were very intentional of going back to what we felt was like the most reasonable time period that we could go back and use as a baseline. We also put in some key provisions specifically to protect the city, because at that point in 21-22, the city's share of the SAFER grant was a larger percentage was coming out of the general fund. And the city council voted to support that even after the SAFER, the federal government funding went out. So within the maintenance of effort provision within the ordinance, we took out one-time and grant funding as well as capital funding projects. So if we bought ambulances that year or a fire engine that year, those are not considered baseline for that maintenance of effort. So we tried to make this as friendly as we possibly could in order to meet that. City manager is absolutely correct. It does lack some specificity, and that's to be determined whether it's going to be on a percentage basis or just a flat dollar amount. But the intention, I know from the county as well as those of us that are involved in this process is to not make things difficult. It is to make things workable and to be able to get in front of the oversight committee with something that shows that we're all doing things to improve services in the easiest and simplest way that we can present that to them. Thank you.
Yes.
I'd love to ask the chief a question. It was a mayors and council, I'll call it a dog and pony show in Sebastopol, when a few of your cohorts did a presentation to the whole Measure H. And I remember listening intently, thinking that this was good and that it was something that I certainly wanted to get back behind and support. I may have been naive to think that because I believe back then we were struggling with a deficit, that indeed this was going to be something that might help us to balance things out. But from what I read, as far as the limitations on what can be spent, like retention of employees, recruitment, and then fire prevention, I'm a little bit unsettled with the idea that I, as a council person, I can count on this to help buffer some of the additional expenses that are going to be coming up to us with our contracts with the fire department. And in that sense, I won't say I feel duped, but maybe I was just naive and I should have asked more questions. But I was, you know, I'll say I was expecting this measure to not be so focused on what the fire professionals wanted, but there was something that could actually allow for a little padding in the variables of cash revenue. And so I've said it.
Okay.
It may not have been a question there, maybe just frustration.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and I will say that we did community outreach. This goes back to right after the 2017 fires. Our first effort at this was Measure G, which we started to craft in 2018. We had listening sessions with the community. We did numerous polling about what priorities were, and communities wanted better and they wanted more, and that's what our focus was. And specific to the city, I would say while the council was very gracious in continuing to fund the SAFER grant positions, which are critical for our minimum staffing levels here in the city. the council had agreed to fund that on a basically one-time basis year to year. It was not permanent funding that was allocated for those minimum staffing positions. What this measure did, and when we first went to the table with Measure G in 2018, 2019, was this was what it was identified through work with previous city managers and councils. This was what was identified as what the most important and critical needs were for the city of Sonoma in terms of fire protection. So there was a relief to the city budget, even if it was just being funded on a year-to-year basis for those three positions. And then there's also an enhancement of services for prevention and vegetation management. And I think one of the other things that just, as we all know, you guys know it very well, just the reliance on sales tax. Sales tax fluctuates. So over time, it's got this kind of a trajectory, but so we're hopeful that, that it's and confident that it'll keep funding those critical positions.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes. More questions, Councilmember.
Just a sort of follow-up comment to that is to also thank you for your support on the district support for Measure T, which I think answers some of the concerns of the vice mayor in terms of our budget, that we also have a responsibility in our ongoing budget for fire safety and emergency services, and that was a key provision that the voters supported in their passage of that. So I think we've heard loud and clear from the people in the valley and in the county that fire services, emergency response time is a priority in this county. And anything that we can do to continue that, I think we're doing what they want us to do, and thank you. And I think that it's great that we have Measure H, and to support, if not supplant, what we have, and we'll do great things, and we can enhance it through our own budget, through Measure T if we need to. So thank you.
Thank you. If there's not any more questions, we're going to move on to public comment. All right, I will now open it up for public comment on this agenda item. Do we have anybody from the public that would like to comment on this? All right, seeing none, I'm going to bring it back to the council for discussion. Yes, city attorney. Oh, no.
There's one nuance in terms of the motion that I would just like to be heard on before you guys get that.
Okay, great. Thank you. Do we have any other discussion? One of the things I just wanted to address quickly is whether it is a dollar amount, or I would assume if it's a dollar amount, there would be an inflation number associated with that. And if it's a percentage amount, then as the percentage grows, that would, since it's a percentage of the total, that would just accommodate the inflation number. So, any discussion that people would like to move forward on this, or are we looking for a motion at this time?
I'll make a motion to adopt the resolution as amended in the packet with all the red lines and so forth as amended. Was that your concern?
Yeah, to ensure that
Yeah.
that the city manager has the authority to negotiate those.
Right. So it's a resolution to authorize the city manager to sign on behalf of the city a funding agreement from the county of Sonoma for disbursement of proceeds from Measure H as amended in the packet.
I'll second it.
All right. City Clerk Barr, would you like to take the roll call?
Councilmember Lowe,
Aye.
Councilmember Gurney,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wellander,
Yes.
Councilmember Dean,
Aye.
Mayor Farrar-Rivas.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank
The motion
you.
carries unanimously.
All right, we're going to move now to the letters of interest that we've received and the direction of myself designating regarding nominations for appointees for regional commissions and committees on behalf of the Mayors and Council Members Association of Sonoma County and the City Selection Committee. And so that people know, I will be taking these votes there's a number of commissions that city council members sit on, and there's a full vote at the mayors and city council meetings as we bring those votes there. So what I'm trying to say is what we may select tonight is who we would like to vote for may not end up being who ends up on those commissions, because then it goes to the full mayor and city council, the mayor's meeting there, where we'll each bring our vote for each of the items on here. So I have prepared a slate, and what I would like to do is go over that, and maybe I'll give people a second if they need to have this in front of them, the city selection committee item. Are we good? Okay, so for the Bay Area Quality Management District Board, there is only one person applying for that seat, and that is Brian Barnacle of Petaluma, and that would be who I'm recommending. Even though he's the only one, he's a fine recommendation. On the Golden Gate Bridge Highway and Transportation District, I am recommending Gerard Giudice. And for the Sonoma County Consolidated Oversight Board, recommending Stephen Zolman of Sebastopol. Excuse me, let me go back. So Brian Barnacle is from Petaluma. Oh, and I missed one. Sorry, I'm doing the city selection committee. And then I'll go back. And then Gerard Giudice is from Rohnert Park. He's the mayor of Rohnert Park right now. And Stephen Zolman, who is the mayor of Sebastopol right now. And then we have...
Madam Mayor, can we take these into
three?
Yeah,
into
since we've
three
got
of-
this
yeah.
group, and then we can do the next group?
Thank you.
Would that work
Yes.
for you?
Yeah, and then that
Okay.
can be, if anybody, does anybody have anyone else that they would like to suggest? Oh, right, so can I take a motion?
Yeah,
for
I
the-
would like to move that we direct the mayor to support Brian Barnacle, Gerard Giudice, and Stephen Zolman for the Bay Area Quality Management, Golden Gate Bridge, and Consolidated Oversight Board in that order.
I second.
City Clerk Barr?
Public comment.
Oh, public
Public
comment.
comment.
Thank you. For each of these, we'll have public comment. And I'm not seeing any public comment on that time, so we will go to a vote. Thank you.
Councilmember Lowe,
Aye.
Councilmember Gurney,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wellander,
Yes.
Councilmember Dean,
Aye.
Mayor Farrar-Rivas.
Aye.
Thank you. The motion carries unanimously.
And now we're going to go to the Board of Directors. And so I would say what we're recommending, so for the North Bay Division LOCC Executive Board, that would be Jackie Elward of Rohnert Park, and she's the only person that is running for that position. For the Sonoma County Agriculture Preservation Open Space District Citizens Advisory Committee, recommending Frank Quint of Petaluma. For the Sonoma Marin Area Rail Transit Smart Commission, recommending Janice Cater Thompson from Petaluma. And for the non-SCTA Sonoma County Transport Authority appointment, recommending Victoria Fleming of Santa Rosa. Yes.
Madam Mayor, I believe we get two
Votes for
the SCTA,
And so
which
that-
and just for clarification, as I sit on that, those will be my, I believe will take place next Monday at the SCTA meeting, I think.
And so then we would be recommending Janice Cater Thompson
Yes.
and
I
And-
would like
and-
to suggest adding Ariel Kelly.
Ariel Kelly. Yes. Great. Are there any other recommendations or nominations the council would like to make? All right, so do I have a motion?
I motion
Oh.
to approve.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Public comment? And the only other thing I'd like to say before we take the vote is one of the things in looking at these, I have had a few discussions with other members of city councils, not this city council, so that we don't violate any Brown Act, but also kind of looking at what cities are represented, you know, just the roles people play, on different committees and commissions. So it's really done with that side of, like, for example, how do we make sure that the smaller cities are represented, that there's the west side, east side, county cities are represented. So anyway, so now we can take the vote on that.
Councilmember Lowe,
Aye.
Councilmember Gurney,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wellander,
Yes.
Councilmember Dean,
Aye.
Mayor Farrar-Rivas.
Aye.
Thank you. The motion carries unanimously.
Thank you. Now I think we are moving on to item, where are we? Last page. We're getting there. I think it's there. Just make sure there's nothing else. And we don't have a second, we didn't have 10 people, so there was not a second public comment. So we are moving to item 11, and I don't think we need public comment on this.